Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Gina Cloud. And she's here to share with us her international best-selling book, W.O.M.A.N, A New Definition for Reclaiming the Feminine. When's the last time you picked up a book and it changed your entire perspective? Well, this book did it for me. So Gina is the creator of Ginacology, a lifestyle health and wellness revolution where she is a speaker, consultant, author, and natural beauty life consultant, educating thousands of women worldwide. With over 25 years of experience in her field, Gina empowers women to live fully awake and alive by breaking free of the media's influence on how they relate to their bodies, each other, and men. Her radically unique approach transforms women's lives from the inside out as she helps them rediscover the self-love and self-esteem that has always been deep within them. So let's welcome to the show, Gina Cloud.
Marianne, this is one of the interviews I've been really looking forward to doing. So thank you for having me on.
Oh my goodness. Well, I read your book, knew we needed to talk. What an amazing book this is. And it's not what I think a lot of people would think. I mean, we talk about, reclaiming the feminine, and I think a lot of people, they get confused on what that can mean.
Yeah, especially these days. And I want to make one correction. It's actually not a new book. It's a reprint. The book originally came out in 2009. And so I did a reprint, obviously just this year, but it originally came out. And the subtitle is what's so important, is a new definition for reclaiming the feminine, because I think we're sort of in a state of crisis as women right now in our lives and in our world with what it is to be women.
So what even had you interested in this topic of, what it means to be feminine?
So, it goes back to really, I guess, my childhood in a lot of ways, because, I didn't have a mom who was particularly maternal, and she wasn't really into any aspect of being a woman. So in many ways, while I used to, how we don't like a lot of things that our parents did or didn't do in our childhood. But what I realized as I became older and more into my 20s, it was like, well, it was really a gift, because I ended up in a position of, how do I define being a woman? If you have a strong mother, you can tend to pattern after her as a daughter. And I thought, well, what does it mean to be a woman? And it's kind of funny, because there's that movie floating around out there right now called What is a Woman? And I really began to just think about, well, what is that? And how do I experience myself to be in this and to be a woman? And what kept coming through for me was, it's about these female bodies that we inhabit. The moment in my life where I remember becoming really interested in being female was when I got my first period, because it was something that to me created this spark of curiosity about what this was. And it felt so magical to me, unlike what we're accustomed to hearing, growing up societally, and our moms and every woman around us is saying, oh, it's a horrible thing. Once it starts, it doesn't stop. You're in pain, you're in agony. But that wasn't my experience, Marianne. I felt really powerful. I felt this like life force energy that was coming from somewhere else, coursing through my body. And I felt it every single month. And it made me so curious about this body as a woman. So my body, I always say my body is my teacher. I call a woman's body her goddess power source, our GPS, because it's, whether we are still in our menstruating years or we are giving birth in an organic way, meaning we are in alignment with listening to the intuitive knowing of how to go through pregnancy. There's so much medical interference in our world right now in women's bodies. And that's one of the things I speak quite strongly about. If you read my book, you know that. And then this coming into wisdom in the years of menopause, where most women just drop off the face of the earth because we are accustomed to a world that values youth at such a high level that we feel disposed of. And because we're never taught earlier in our lives that the beauty of what we are is simply through being a woman and being in these incredible vessels. It's not our physical appearance or our youth, but we are so indoctrinated into it that it's such a a really difficult time for women when menopause comes. But this beautiful triad of bleeding, birthing, and menopause are an incredible, extraordinary gift that we have access to through being female. And so my body is what made me, to go back to the original question you asked me, my body is what made me say, wow, being a woman is an incredible thing.
And then definitely it is. And thank goodness you asked these questions because you really bring forward a discussion I felt that was really powerful. And before we get too far down the road, I'd love for you to share with us what the acronym WOMAN means.
Thank you. I always forget my own stuff. So WO.M.A.N, yeah, the book it's a quick read. It's only 140 pages for people that are interested. It's also available on Audible and Kindle. But WO.M.A.N is an acronym, and the W is wild, not as the Girls Gone Wild version, but this primal instinctual connection to our innate sexuality, our instinctual nature. O is open, and that's the chapter where I go into the heart connection that we are starving and needing in our lives as women. M is magical, and it's where I get into all the yummy body stuff that I just talked about, our periods and birth, giving birth, being pregnant, giving birth. And in the new version of the book, menopause is in there because when I originally published it, I hadn't been through the process. So I didn't write about it. I only write about things that I experienced. So M is magical. The A is authentically empowered, and it's how we take what our innate gifts are and give them to the world in our most authentically expressed way possible. N is nectar, and it's actually like maybe my favorite letter in the whole thing because it's the beautiful, sensual, seductive energy of woman. And by seductive, I don't mean, enticing or manipulating through our bodies, but it's the real playfulness of woman. And I think of it as a very colorful aspect where we sort of tie the W, the O, the M, and the A, and the N. It culminates in the N. So that's what the acronym stands for.
You start off your book talking about why we need to reclaim the feminine. And I'd love for you to share that for our listeners.
Yeah. Notice that makes me take a really deep breath. I think there's a lot of grieving for a lot of women around being women because of, as I said a little while ago, the way that we're socialized and indoctrinated when we come into this world as girls. And I think we're living in a time more than ever where patriarchal values, and I always like to make a distinction because men are being assaulted on a lot of levels in our culture right now too, and that's a whole other conversation. But a lot of times men hear the word patriarchy and they think it means men, but patriarchy is a societal construct. It's an ideology in a lot of ways as well. And within patriarchal ideologies, there is this overarching embracing of what the masculine is in terms of how we live life. And what I mean by that is, there are qualities like yin and yang, dark and light, or shadow and light. And the qualities of the masculine that have sort of taken over and dominated in our world are, goals and being on a schedule and pushing and competitiveness and there's so much aggression and not a lot of feeling. And the qualities of the feminine that are missing in our world that would literally bring balance. I feel that the masculine isn't wrong, and I don't ever want to have anyone think that I'm saying that. I'm saying we're so out of balance. So the qualities of the feminine that I talk about that are so important in our lives are stillness, silence, vulnerability, openness, communication, nature. There's so many pieces. But what we do in this patriarchal mindset, this overly masculine environment, is we sort of diminish those qualities, like, oh, taking downtime, oh, you're lazy, you got to keep going, it's like the corporate mindset to me is a quintessential example of the patriarchy, because how corporations are run for the most part, in sort of a cutthroat, competitive, dog eat dog, never stop, burnout. That is what we are living with. And women have we become accustomed through feminism to think that in order for us to achieve economic parity or to be taken seriously or to be accepted, that we have to become like men. And in the process of doing that, we take all the beauty, all that W.O.M.A.N stuff out of the equation. And when we do that, we suffer. That's why I started out by saying I think there's a lot of grief, because in my coaching work with women and talking to women just on an ordinary level, I feel and I see this kind of numbness that's set in. And the numbness that's set in is from a place of, I think, a lot of self-protection. But many women don't even know that they're missing their own feminine because they never were taught what it is or how to embrace it or celebrate it. And it's not, being at home and, being a housewife. There was that old example of how we defined women and femininity and all of that. Feminine is an essence that invites, invokes, creates, and emanates those qualities that are, beauty and softness. And it creates this environment where you become magnetic and draw unto you. And it's like, instead of the masculine paradigm of go out there and make it happen, which is what most women are doing anyway, we're like, we've become so like the masculine paradigm of how we go out and get things. But the feminine in its beauty and in its essence we can draw things unto us. And even if you think about our biology and our physiology, we take into our bodies, right? That's the magnetic frequency of the feminine. So when we are embracing that W-O-M-A-N and we're living through those letters, we become this magnetic force where you want something, you create it by bringing it to you, but that's not something that is honored or valued because, like I said, many times it's like laziness. Well, what are you doing? You're not doing anything. You're going for walks every day, or you're meditating, or you're dancing. God forbid, that's something you love to do. You got to you got to work harder. You got to do more. And I really think that feminism, especially the version that we're at now, I kind of call toxic feminism, because I think that in many ways it has become a man-hating paradigm. And I've had many conversations with men about this. The original feminism that started with Gloria Steinem back in the 60s and stuff was about helping us get to economic parity, but it's gone far beyond that. And I would have referred to myself as a feminist before, but now I don't want any part of how it's being done now.
Thank you. And I appreciate you talking about the feminist too, because it seems that it's got to be so confusing for young men. I think it's confusing for young women as well to know what to expect, or not even expect, but what you value.
Yeah. And I think especially with regards to not even just young men, I have conversations with a lot of guys about this topic in particular and how it relates to dating and them trying to, get into relationships. And it is very confusing because there's a hostility coming at men through what I call toxic feminism. That makes it very difficult for a man to be kind and gentle and honoring. And that's another thing, it's like having someone open your door, having someone carry your bag, having all of these things that sort of were traditionally done by men for women. I always say, any man that looks at me knows I can carry my own bag and open my own door. It's about, to me, I take it as an honoring when they see me and they feel something emanating from me, like in that magnetism I was talking about, and they see something and they think, wow, what a beautiful woman, or whatever's going through their head. And when I say beautiful, I mean in an essence kind of way, because we all have this. It's not about the physical. I want to be clear on that. And it inspires the masculine to take an action that says, I want to do this for you because I honor that you are, that you're a woman. And I mean, in ancient times, we were always honored and valued in societies that, were not trying to, that we're not trying to suppress women, which certainly did happen. But in ancient times, the idea that we were vessels for life was enough for us to be honored and valued and respected and treated in certain ways. But we've lost touch with the knowing that this is a quintessential part of our biology as women. This is what defines us as women. And that's why so much of what's happening now with what I call the radical trans movement, not the legit LGBTQ movement that has struggled just as much as women have for acceptance, but this radical movement that's infiltrated the legit one. I keep saying it's like patriarchy in a dress, and it's sort of this toxic patriarchal thing trying to come in and take more away from women. So, we have to, and all of this is very confusing for young men and older men. I talk to men in their 40s or 50s, and they're all struggling with, how do I show up as a man now? Because women are so hostile and aggressive towards me. And yet there are so many women who have, just like I said, this is the part that really breaks my heart when I go back, keep feeling this word grief, that many women are just so shut down, like they've given up on sex because there's an addiction to pornography going on, and so many women don't want to participate in that, and they don't know what to do about it. So it's like, well, let's just turn all of that off. Let's just go inside. And there aren't a lot of models or opportunities or experiences for women to reconnect with their feminine in this way that's empowering. As I said, it's not the doormat version. A lot of times people hear feminine or femininity, and they want to go into that old school narrative of what that is. And they're like, that's not me. That's not what I want to be. But there's a strength. There was a woman the other day. This is the kind of stuff that really touches me and teaches me that, and I don't talk about myself a whole lot. It's always the hardest thing for me to do. It kind of chokes me up a little bit. I was at this, at a friend's party, and this woman, she came up to me and she said, she goes, you're such, and I'm not going to remember everything because it was hard. It was hard enough for me to just like stand there and go, wow. She said, you're such an incredible emanation of, and she actually said emanation of just like beauty and strength and softness and gentleness. And she said, you just have all these qualities that, like, I really want to be what you are giving off. And I was like, wow. And those are the moments where I realize how much work I have to do, and how important it is to just be. This is part of what I feel that women have to understand. Men too, but we are the source, and we are what I believe will heal this planet from all of the insanity that's happening right now. When we step into being woman, being that W.O.M.A.N, that emanation happens. And I do walk my talk. I live the life that I share. I've created this work through my own living of it. And when I've worked with coaching clients, I see every single time without fail how much it works, how important it is, and how it changes women's lives. And the moment in time, like I've worked with a lot of women who live very much within this masculine paradigm, Marianne, women who've been in the military, women in corporate America, women who are the providers. And a lot of these women, they're so engrossed in the doing and the achieving in that masculine frequency that they're having a hard time finding relationships, because they're actually coming at it and they're finding men who are sort of in the feminine role, because you don't have sexual chemistry without polarity. But there's always a moment when I'm working with these women where they have an emotional breakdown of sobbing. And I usually get a phone call where they suddenly realize what being a woman means. And many times it's come through the way that I educate them around their cycle and what to do and the tools to use to kind of tap into that. But there's always that moment. And it brings me to tears as well as them, because it's in there in every single woman. We have been so beat down for centuries, and we are beating ourselves down when we don't wake up and realize how we are participating in our own exploitation. On my website, I have a blog, and I've got a lot of really great pieces that I've written. And it's funny, I always say I don't take credit for my writing, because I believe that I'm a channel for this work, that I am a willing participant in bringing this back to people. And so I open myself up and say, use me in whatever way you want to. And the words come through. And there's literally been times, Marianne, where I've written stuff and I read it and I go, wow, that's really amazing. Where'd that come from? Because I'm like, I had nothing to do with it. But there's one piece that I wrote called Ladies. I always have these quirky titles and they're long often. It's Ladies, Wake Up Your Sleeping Beauty and Stop Exploiting Yourself. Because we are participating in our own exploitation and denigration. And this is something that gets me so fired up because the indoctrination is so severe and so pervasive and so effective that we don't understand that the way we run around chasing beauty and the way everybody is modifying, even young women with Botox and fillers and surgeries and changing our bodies. What if we took all of that money and that time and that mental airspace thinking about how to change how we look to conform to the pervasive indoctrinology that's forcing us to think this way because we're not thinking for ourselves? We took all that time and money and we applied it to our own power, our own empowerment, our own, what are we driven by? Who am I? What do I love? Instead of this conformity to a tribe of, step 40 and looking women who, the moment we begin to age, there's the next part of the indoctrination. Now, oh my God, I'm past my prime. I'm old. My eggs are dried up. Nobody wants me. I'm young. Okay, time for surgery. We participate in our own exploitation and denigration because we're not awake enough to see what's being done to us. It was done to us outside of us, and now it's being done to us from within us. And that's the most dangerous form, is when it's sold to us in a way that they no longer have to externally sell it. All they have to do is, it's like the program is intact. And now you're running it yourself. Now they can move on. I used to do a workshop called Sacred Facts of Life for little girls that were around 12-ish before they got their periods. And I used to teach them how advertising was programming them and how they needed to understand that they needed everything they heard or saw, magazines, TV, music lyrics. I used to have them bring in their favorite music lyrics. It's trying to make you think a certain way. Hold on to your own mind. And I really believe that if we women, if we stopped doing all of the things that modify and in a way, I feel like defile in a lot of ways. I feel that strongly about it. Our own bodies, which to me, as I said, is our goddess power source. If we stopped doing that, what would we be capable of doing in this life? We could rule the world, and we would rule it with loving kindness for the most part. We can be fierce when we need to, but we are being kept down and have been for millennia. And we have to wake up and stop doing this to ourselves. When we stop doing it, if we all band together and say, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm going to let my hair grow gray. And by the way, that's the one thing I haven't done yet, is let myself go gray. And it's mostly because I have long hair, and the process of going through it, it's like, oh my God, that's the one thing that I have not acquiesced to yet. And I will. But if we allow ourselves to just have these beauty rituals. I'm a huge advocate of ritual in women's lives. It is something that allows us to really honor and celebrate the beauty that we are. So I'm not saying don't do anything. I get massages every week. I love going to spas. I'm a skincare junkie. It's not about not doing anything and letting yourself, go to hell. That's not what I'm talking about. It's about doing it in a way that honors and celebrates where you are at any given stage in your life, and you're not trying to conform to someone else's idea of what beauty is. So this is a topic for me that I really love to help women come off of this drug in a way. I think I see it as kind of a drug, and to come back home to self. I see what's possible if we all rise up and do this, and the world would change in a heartbeat.
It seems that in many ways we've been in this position where we have, and you talk about how we're really working with all this programming to keep ourselves basically in like a cage and not to shine our own light.
Yep. It's, and that's what it comes down to. In fact, there's a quote in one of the chapters of my book, I don't remember, from Marianne Williamson. It's the one about, sort of who are you not to shine your light, basically, in essence. To dim your light so that others feel better. And that's why what that woman said to me the other day, made me realize how important it is to be who you are and to have the courage to step outside the box. And I always think when I hear people say things like, oh, one person can't make a difference, I always use this analogy because everyone can relate to it. As if you've ever been on the freeway. I'm in Southern California. I'm not sure where you are, but our freeways here are a nightmare a lot of times. And I said, have you ever been on the freeway and you're driving along and all of a sudden the traffic just stops and you're backed up for miles. And then all of a sudden you get up to the spot where the issue is, and you just see this one car that's kind of out of a lane. And I go, that one person just impacted thousands of people by just getting out of line, by choosing not to conform. Thousands of people's lives have been impacted by that one person. So never underestimate what you can do as one person, And I don't know, I feel it's important also for women to reclaim our communities. We are communal creatures. We like to gather and come together and talk and share and cry and eat and cook food together. And, especially over the last 3.5 years, we've lost, all of humanity has lost our contact with each other, and we're allowing the internet stuff to be a substitute for what should be real human contact. But I feel it's another place where we as women are grieving without knowing that we're grieving, that we've lost this community that we really, thrive on.
It seems a lot of times we are putting ourselves down and other women down. So it's so difficult even to build that community.
I think that's another part of the indoctrination, though, is we're sort of, from the time we're young, we're sort of taught that women are competitive and backbiting to each other. And I, honest to God, I don't think I've ever had that experience in my life with my friends or in social environments or whatever. And men are competitive, in their own ways. Usually a lot of times it's over work and business, but I think it's another story that we've been told and a myth that we've bought into that we need to change, because there's another great blog piece I wrote, getting high off my connections with my sisterhood or something like that. And it's just kind of how when women come together, what becomes possible, how we support each other, and the creativity that comes from being together and, helping someone who's having an issue problem solve, or the times in my life that I've been going through really difficult times and my women friends picked me up off the floor, lovingly, metaphorically slapped me into remembering who I am and to pick myself up and get, and keep going. That's something I get from my women friends, and I think it's something that most women get from other women. So we have to rebuild community. I think it's really important.
So for our listeners there that many of them are in traffic, waiting and looking at the car that's up there that has shifted everyone's life, but what a great metaphor that is. What is one thing that they can take with them for today?
I would say start listening to your own inner voice. And if you've lost touch with her, go outside, leave your phone in the house, go sit under a tree, go for a walk, go to the beach, say you don't have any of those things available, take a hot bath, say you don't have that available, just sit still and listen, because the wisdom and the gift will come in that silence and stillness, which is one of the most important essences of the feminine, is that silence and that stillness and that receptivity, because that's where you get the answers, the guidance, the wisdom, and it's what allows you to really open into your life with trust.
So Gina, I'm sure there are many women going, okay, this sounds great. I can't wait not only to pick up your book, but maybe I need a little bit more help. Do you offer like coaching or classes or all the above?
Absolutely. My one-on-one coaching, I struggle sometimes because I'm not an online class person. I really believe it goes against everything I'm trying to promote, which is us really connecting personally, deeply. My coaching is one of the favorite things that I do because I see how every single time it makes a difference. I'm willing to do like a group coaching platform if I had enough people that were willing to do it, but I'd need to vet everybody and make sure it would kind of be a good fit. And I do talks on request if people want me to come and talk about pretty much anything. I always throw myself into the deep end of the pool and say, whatever you want, I'll come talk about it. If as long as it relates to our lives as women, I'll talk about anything. So classes, coaching for sure. And I'm working on putting some immersions where I can take women. I've always kind of fantasized about taking women to like places like, Greece, Italy, or just places where we can be in nature and immerse ourselves together for a week and do the work that's in the book, hands-on, and really create foundations to move forward in our lives with some tools. And also, I forgot to completely mention, I created something called Gynecology, and it's on my website. I have 10 principles. You can print them out, put them on your refrigerator, bathroom mirror. And there are 10 tenets for how to live your life in alignment with W.O.M.A.N, with W.O.M.A.N. And it's part of the sort of the foundation of also how I teach what I teach.
Well, Gina, I found your book, Woman, A New Definition for Reclaiming the Feminine, to be such a powerful read. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
And thank you for being a unique voice in media. And what I mean by that is this was a great interview for me because there's so much soundbite stuff going on and people sort of unwilling to really take the time to listen, which is also an element of the feminine. And I really appreciate you. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Gina. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your book, Woman, A New Definition for Reclaiming the Feminine. If you'd like to learn more about Gina and her work, please visit her website at ginacloud.com. There you can find her book available for purchase as well as on Amazon, and her audiobook is available on Audible. Well, we're going to pause here for a quick moment, and we'll be right back after this message.
Are you feeling disconnected from your life and your body as a woman? Do you feel numb emotionally and/or sexually and just not sure how to feel really alive again, or maybe for the first time? Are you struggling with body and self-acceptance, especially during menopause? If you'd like to reclaim your feminine and learn more about W.O.M.A.N and gynecology and how it can help empower your life, contact Gina Cloud at www.ginacloud.com.
Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.